Session is designing the safer transit bus, innovation for operator health, and our guest here is Dr. Jonathan Hack. He's the Dean of Centennial Innovates, which is with Centennial College, and of course he oversees applied research, innovation, and entrepreneurship at the college. So Jonathan is Dean of Centennial Innovates at Centennial College, which is what I just said, sorry, that's part of the title as well, where he leads applied research, innovation, and entrepreneurship. He brings more than 30 years of experience in the automotive and aerospace sectors, and over our table there I learned a lot about their aerospace work, which is really fascinating. He has led innovation initiatives at Bombardier and General Motors. He's also a professional engineer holding degrees from McMaster University and York University. So please welcome Jonathan Hack. Thank you.
As was mentioned, I'm Jonathan Hack. I've spent my career in the transportation sector, both working for General Motors for 23 years and then Bombardier Aerospace for 9 years, all in the innovation area. And we've got an exciting panel discussion for you here today. You're not going to hear just from an academic perspective, but you're going to hear from various perspectives. You're going to hear from the TTC and their very interesting innovation-led activity. You're going to hear from Dr. Sarah Fox from Carnegie Mellon University in the US. You're going to hear from the Amalgamated Transit Workers Union on why safety is so important to transit bus operators, and you're going to hear from the operators themselves. And we've got some of our students here that have been working on the project, some of our research associates. So I'm really excited for you to hear what we have to say today. So being that this is a safety conference, wanted to speak a little bit about innovation and some of the work that we're doing at Centennial College. We're here today to talk about the bus design innovation platform. You'll hear a lot about the intersectionality with safety there and safety by design. But we also have other activities where we are engaged in safety-related activities as well. And so I wanted to highlight, we have a wearable interactive medical technology access center in health. Now that's a big, long name, but what does that mean? We're essentially working on new technologies for healthcare, for pain management, for advanced diagnostics, and we're embedding sensors into fabrics that, in partnership with the Kite Rehabilitation Network right here in Toronto, are leading the way in terms of advancing rehabilitation efforts in the area. And so very excited about that, but we're not here to talk about that today. We're going to talk about our Transit Innovation Hub, which is a standalone facility at our Ashtonby campus in Scarborough, in partnership with the TTC and the ATU and Centennial College. Centennial is a top 50 research college in Canada. We are the leaders in terms of providing paid internships for students in applied research. And so I want to talk about that. We provide over 700 paid internships for students every single year. Why is this important? Because students come and they get the learning in the classroom, but then they're able to apply that with applied research projects and working directly with industry partners and learning how to apply those skills that they've learned in the classroom directly with industry partners, where the industry partners evaluate the students and quite often they hire them upon graduation. Everything we do is mapped against the UN Sustainable Development Goals. These are the goals for the planet and the world's to-do list. And so we're very focused on sustainability. And we have 7 areas of research, unlike universities, where professors have a research area and they've got hundreds of research areas. Colleges aren't organized that way. Colleges just focus on a few key areas that are strategically important to the college. And so we're engaged in innovation and entrepreneurship, teaching students how to become entrepreneurs and really evaluate business opportunities. I talked about wearable interactive medical technologies, transportation and low carbon mobility, aerospace and advanced manufacturing. We've got a brand new facility at Downsview Park where we have state-of-the-art aircraft and great opportunities to learn there. data analytics, we're really leaning into artificial intelligence and data analytics, cyber computing as well, and then sustainable innovation and social innovation research. So, applied research projects provide students with invaluable experience, but they also provide industry partners with very cost-effective ways of developing new products, new capabilities, and taking those forward to market. And then our entrepreneurship activities provide students with the confidence and the tools to be able to build that for-profit or for-change venture that they want. So, our transportation research activity has a lot of different elements to it. We have a lot of partners from Canadian Tire to the TTC to T1 Automotive Technologies, Leighton's Automotive, lots of various partners. And we're thrilled to have them all. We're working actively with York University as well on the Smart TO activity partnered through the Ontario Vehicle Innovation Network. But that's enough from me. I'm going to invite up here Wenzi Ckurshumova, who's the lead on the program, and she's going to talk about our Transit Innovation Hub and the project that we have going with the TTC, and then she's going to introduce Naina Dewan from the TTC, who is responsible for the TTC Innovation Portfolio. Over to you, Wenzi.
Thanks, Jonathan. Andrew? As you see, it takes a village for what we do, so there's quite a few of us on stage. Now, innovation in public transit is something that's not only about new technologies. It's about people, it's about safety, it's about how the people interact with those new technologies. And so today's session will explore TTC's kind of expanding innovation ecosystem through the lens of the Bus Design Innovation Program. So the Bus Design Innovation Program is a program that we like to emphasize. It's a collaborative applied research project between TTC, ATU, International Local 113, and Centennial College, and it's an open ecosystem for academic partners to join. It is a unique collaboration because it not only provides turf for innovation to find its way into transit, but it also creates a culture change because it involves interaction with, transit leadership, frontline operators, the union, academia, and so as to co-design and co-develop new technologies and that basically improve the health and safety of operators and passengers. So with that said, it's my great pleasure to welcome Naina Dewan. Naina Dewan is TTC's Manager of New Technology and Innovation, where she leads exploration, piloting, and scaling of emerging technologies to drive meaningful outcomes for public transit. She oversees innovation strategy, applied technology initiatives, cross-sector partnerships, and the translation of new ideas into operational impact, grounded in human-centered design principles that prioritize the needs of riders, operators, and frontline staff. Naina will present to you the TTC's innovation pipeline, and so always keep in mind that through the Bus Design Innovation Program, or as we shortly call it, BDIP, innovation is less about employing the new technologies on the market, and it's more about co-designing it and co-developing it with and for the end user. So Naina, welcome.
All right, hi everybody. So I would want to start off with this African proverb that I feel like is a really good embodiment of the work that we do and the spirit of the work that we do. And it goes like this. I hope I don't butcher it. If you want to go fast, go alone. And if you want to go far, go together. And I feel that the work that we do with the ATU and with Centennial, with academia, really embodies the spirit of that. It's only when we band together and co-create solutions that we can ensure that it's always embedded in empathy, it's rooted in that, and I think that's really the spirit of the work. And I'm excited here to kind of be at a safety conference because I think safety is so much more than physical safety. It's emotional, psychological, mental, so many other aspects of safety that our innovation portfolio here at the TTC is looking to tackle. So excited to share with you a little bit about a sneak peek of the work that we're doing, and excited to collaborate and kind of keep the conversation going. All right. Oh, it's an amber alert. Okay. So with this slide, what I wanted to showcase to all of you is our innovation pipeline process, which starts off with idea sourcing. So if you look at the leftmost side of what we call our innovation portfolio, these are all the pathways through which we encourage or kind of generate ideas. So if you see innovation challenges, that's everything we do with hackathons, and idea challenges that we do with academia, that's a core part of it. We also do a lot of employee innovation challenges. So again, building that culture of innovation internally at the TTC. And also establishing that at the end of the day, like, we really want to democratize innovation. We don't want innovation to only live in the ivory towers in just a few rooms. We want to make sure that it's cascaded across. So it should be coming from the workers, from the front line, really the folks that are actually being challenged with the problem. We really want them to come to us with what are their core ideas. Youth engagement is a really important piece of the work we do. So everything from the hackathons that I talked about becomes really important. We've done quite a few with Centennial College and U of T and a couple of other universities, and continue to do a lot more of that. We also get a lot of our ideas from trends, and this could be foresight trends and signals that are in the market. Also events like this and events like Collision, all of the tech conferences that happen globally and in Toronto, that's a core part of how we generate ideas. And then the goal is to take it through this innovation pipeline. So is this idea desirable by the end user? Is it viable to scale? Is it something that's adding more risk or safety risks within the pipeline that kind of gets weighted negatively? And then anything that allows us to move faster, to test and learn, that's really the kind of methodology we're trying to build here. Before, I think we built the innovation team, there wasn't that culture of test and learn very quickly, fail fast, fail forward. But with the innovation mandate that we're building, we're trying to change that. And innovation might not be the first thing that comes to mind when you think of the TTC, but we want to change that. We want to be able to be more tech first and tech forward. If you go a little bit to this is just like a high-level portfolio sneak peek for you guys to kind of see how ideas move from idea generation all through research and exploration, business casing, all of that. So this really allows us to go deeper into, is this ROI focused? Is this something that we should actually be putting resources into, and so on? We take a lot of pride in engaging the end user. So that's why you see like youth and operators, bus operators being a core part of it. So we really want to make sure their voice is heard, it's front and center, and that becomes really important. This again is a sneak peek into some of the work we have ongoing for this year and next year. We're most excited, and not just because I have ATU here with me, but we're most excited about some of the operator-focused technologies and solutions that we're working on, especially VR for training that we're doing with the tracks and structures frontline workers, which has allowed us to modernize training. It's allowed us to reduce safety risks because there is more knowledge retention for VR for training, so we're seeing a lot of adoption for that work. We also have quite a few interesting solutions within Bus Design Innovation Program that I don't want to take Wenzi's thunder away. I know she's going to be talking about them. But these are some of the solutions we're really rooting in bus operator safety, and how can we make their workplace safer, which is the bus, and how can we make the bus as a system safer for them. It's been a lot of teaching moments for me personally working on this program, just understanding the kind of risk and pressures and mental pressures as well that the bus operators go through, and we're just not educated enough about that, but there's just not enough empathy. And I think this program is allowing for us to change that and really work with them at the design table to co-create these solutions, which is really exciting. We are, of course, always looking at dashboarding and metrics, the kind of, does innovation finally give back ROI to the organization? How are we able to engage, end users? How are we able to engage employees? What kind of culture is it creating? Cost avoidance, all of those elements. So I think ROI and business casing definitely is important, but we're ensuring that, the solutions that we look at are future-proofing our organization and really enhancing safety for our workers. So I think that's my spiel here today. Thank you for letting me share this innovation portfolio with you, and happy to partner and continue any kind of conversations of collaboration with all of you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Naina. So central to the Bus Design Innovation Program is, do I press the OK for slide switching? Oh, yes. Okay. I figured it out. Central is really what we call the Transit Innovation Lab. So what we see within the ecosystem is that companies and innovators, they don't specifically innovate for transit typically, very rarely, because transit, even though in Toronto, we are home to the third largest transit agency in North America, transit is considered a niche area. And usually when people say that it's a niche area, it means it's very difficult to make your initial return on investment if you innovate specifically for transit. So what we see is that technologies that are developed for other industries or for other purposes have the potential to be applied to transit very successfully. But what is missing really is the sandbox where you test those technologies, and the sandbox where you kind of coach the innovators to what is needed for their technology to make it in transit. This is exactly what the Transit Innovation Lab does. It essentially provides this sandbox for them to come and test. We like to call our logo that it's at the intersection of the traditional and the transformational or the new. And it's really important when you think about transit, even though transportation is a rapidly changing industry, you see in the news, and it gives you the impression that, the next mode of transportation, the next propulsion system, they're all just coming very rapidly, autonomous vehicles. But transit is not really that way. Transit is an industry that's very conservative in its nature. It takes years for something to be considered to be of the safety level, and the purpose of transit is really to transport people, transport them safely, and transport them fast and on time. So the priorities are slightly different than innovation, and so this is why it is so important to have a sandbox where you can really test these new technologies. It educates on both ends, so it allows transit agencies to evaluate technologies before they buy, but it also it kind of educates the innovation community because it teaches them what the use cases are for their technologies in transit. The hub also serves as a kind of hub for attracting academic partnerships and collaboration. Our researchers are our students. Guys, wave your hands, and our profs. This way, we also train the next generation of innovation, of transit innovators. So it really gives them hands-on experience in an area that is very, very considered typically quite niche. So with that, in terms of the Bus Design Innovation Program, it's really meant concretely, and I will show you some of the technologies that we have tested so far. So it's really meant to reimagine and reinvent the next bus. And it views the bus from the perspective of the operators, so improve health and safety and conditions for the operators, but also from the passenger side. And so, as I mentioned before, it's a collaborative applied research project with TTC, ATO International, Local 113, and Centennial College. What really kind of started BDIP is if you take a look at statistics of bus operators or injuries on the job, depending on what you're looking at from all of these bus operators tend to be 10 to 15% above average. So there's a lot that can be done, and a lot of new technology we are exploring a lot of new technologies that can basically reduce either repetitive strain injuries from, constant bob and weaving because of avoidance of blind spots, or reducing vertical vibrations as perceived by the spine, and so on. So we have dedicated buses. These are buses representative of all of the entire TTC fleet, including the very new battery electric buses that are used as prototypes where technology is actually mounted and evaluated on. And we do have a bus that is considered an industry standard. It's a European model that was donated to the program by the Washington's Learning Center. We're looking at technologies that can improve every single thing you see on the bus, from visibility to driver comfort to a more intelligent and a smart dash to display information for the driver. So some of the technologies, such as, for example, smart suspension seats, those are applicable beyond transit. So those are applicable for any type of professional driving you can imagine. So we did evaluate whether smart suspension seats or semi-active suspension seats can actually reduce vertical vibrations to the driver. Most of you that take TTC have noticed, and certainly COVID did exacerbate that, have noticed the barriers that now separate the operator from the rest of the compartment. Don't think putting a barrier on a bus is an easy thing to do. There's a lot of things that one needs to study. The bus, we usually say you're sitting like in a fish tank. It's glass everywhere. So the reflection of any single surface that you now put in the bus, you really have to watch this, so you have to study. So a lot of science goes into what looks to you a simple barrier on a bus. And so some of the studies that we have done is really looking as to what's the most effective barrier and how would that barrier not now impede visibility for the drivers. And some of the longer-term project objectives is really reducing the blind spots for drivers, reducing the sizes of A-pillars, and so on. So this is, I say always BDAP is an integrated program, and why is this very important? Is with every new technology that finds its way into the bus, we then take a step back and say, well, how does that now combine with all the other things that are already in the bus, with all the other new technologies that we are putting in? So what you see here is an example of the CFD analysis, which is essentially the airflow within the bus. Now, all the original equipment manufacturers do an airflow analysis within the bus because they need to study where to put the vents to achieve a better airflow, or achieve kind of a more vertical airflow to prevent virus transmissions and pathogen transmissions. But then they put a barrier and nobody studies whether that's a better airflow for the driver and the passengers or whether it impedes the current airflow. And so these are the kind of studies that bring real value to allowing all these new technologies to enter into transit. So with that said, we always say that we co-design and co-develop with the operators and with the operators in mind. And so part of it is really reflects that BDAP's kind of approach is the human-centered design. So I'm really happy that Dr. Sarah Fox could make it through the border today to share with us some of her work at Carnegie Mellon University. So she's an assistant professor at CMU in the Human-Computer Interaction Institute, where she directs the Tech Solidarity Lab. Her work examines the use of AI and automation on essential work sectors with a focus on developing systems that center workers' needs and expertise. Her work has earned awards in leading computing venues and has been featured in Design Issues, the Journal of Peer Production, and New Media and Society. She holds a PhD in Human-Centered Design and Engineering from the University of Washington. Her research has been covered by news outlets such as Politico, Wired, the Associated Press, and is supported by the National Science Foundation, the Department of Transportation, and the Russell Sage Foundation, among others. So please welcome Dr. Sarah Fox. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you, Wenzi, for that introduction. It was really nice to hear from both of you so far about all the work happening. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about something that I think gives a backdrop to what motivates a project like BDIP, the importance of it, what makes it special. And I'll give you a sense of that through some ongoing work that I've been conducting over the past handful of years with ATU, but also TWU, which is the Transport Workers Union, and the AFL-CIO Technology Institute. And so what I want to talk about today is a kind of deceptively simple idea, which is that if we want safer transit systems, we need to design them with the people who actually do the work. And that means thinking not just about vehicles or automation technologies themselves, but also the organizational systems that shape operators' daily working conditions. So this research that I'll briefly describe today comes out of a multi-year collaboration, like I said, with ATU, TWU, and the AFL-CIO. And to understand how automation and new technologies are affecting transit work, we use several different methods. So we conducted observations of regular bus operations, group interviews with operators, and a large-scale diary study with operators both in the United States and Canada. And a diary study is effectively where operators at the end of the day would take a log of their work, so describe the conditions and experiences that they had at work during that day. We also have done observations of autonomous vehicle testing facilities and teleoperations environments to kind of add broader context. So the diary study alone, just to give you a sense of the kind of depth of this work, had over 2,000 entries that operators completed, and we also did 100 hours of follow-up interviews. So what we're trying to kind of understand through all of this was not just how operators feel about automation in the abstract, but what their work actually looks like in the day-to-day. So one of the clearest findings that we've had, just to kind of give you the long and short of it, is that operators' work is routinely underestimated by engineers. So to put it plainly, operators are managing far more than driving. On the road, they're navigating unpredictable traffic behavior, weather, construction, special events, and constantly changing roadway conditions. On the bus itself, they're also managing accessibility needs of passengers, medical emergencies, passenger conflicts, and other kinds of public safety situations. So operators in the studies often describe their work as expecting the unexpected. And from a kind of health and safety perspective, that matters because safety in transit depends heavily on human judgment, adaptation, and care work. That's difficult to formalize or automate. So when we think about introducing new technologies into transit systems, we need to start from a realistic understanding of what operators actually do. So a major focus of this research has been on understanding how automation is being introduced into transit systems. And one thing that we found is many systems are built around a narrow model of operator work. So they tend to focus on vehicle control while overlooking those broader cognitive, social, and safety responsibility that operators carry out every single day. So one example that has stayed with me came from an autonomous vehicle pilot. I'll just describe this example to illustrate the stakes of this. An autonomous pilot in Las Vegas, Nevada. So during a low-speed incident, the AV shuttle detected a truck backing toward it and stopped, but the truck kept coming. So the operator needed to intervene, but the manual controls were difficult to access and relied on an Xbox-style controller rather than a familiar kind of transit control like a steering wheel that many of us have been trained on. So later, the operating company of the AV shuttle clarified that the manual mode had never been intended for emergency use. Makes you wonder what was it for then, if not for emergency use, right? So for me, this incident illustrates a larger issue. So the operator was expected to step in during failure, but was never meaningfully considered in the design of the system itself. So, and that disconnect obviously creates risks. So because in practice, operators are often still responsible for managing, say, edge cases, failures, and unpredictable situations that automated systems cannot adequately handle. So rather than replacing operators, like is in the popular discourse, automation often redistributes responsibility in ways that are not always visible in the design process. In our research, we describe this dynamic as turning workers into shock absorbers for imperfect automation. So what that means is that operators are expected to absorb failures, gaps, and limitations of technological systems. And that can create several health and safety concerns. So they can be exposed to punctuated moments of really intense engagement, say in an emergency situation like I just described, increased cognitive burdens of having to constantly monitor and make up for the gaps in the machine operation. And then with any kind of data-driven system, there's also the possibility for heightened surveillance and control. So from a human factors perspective, this is all especially important. So long periods of passive monitoring followed by sudden intervention demands are actually very difficult forms of work. It's very difficult cognitively to manage this. So the question is not whether a technology may work technically or theoretically. The question really is, how are responsibilities redistributed? Who carries the risks when systems fail? And whose expertise is incorporated into design decisions from the beginning? So this is where participatory design becomes really important. So participatory design has a long history in labor and technology research. So at its core, it argues that workers should actively participate in shaping the systems that structure their working conditions. So in our work, we think about participation across 3 different levels. So design, deployment, and governance. So this means involving workers directly in technology development, giving them a say in how technologies are introduced into workplaces, and ensuring they help define the rules, standards, and accountability structures surrounding these systems. Importantly, we frame this not simply as a kind of ethical ideal, but as a safety strategy. So because when frontline expertise is excluded, safety risks are often built into systems from the start. So operators possess situated knowledge about transit environments that designers, vendors, and policymakers frequently do not have access to. And that knowledge is essential for building systems that are robust under real-world conditions. So this slide shows 2 examples of what participatory design looks like in practice. So one, of course, is BDIP, the program that we're describing here on this panel. So I won't go too deeply into describing this because others on this panel will speak with much more depth and much more directly about the project and its development. But what I want to emphasize is the broader model that it represents. So bringing operators, unions, agencies, and technical partners together in the design process to shape safety-critical technologies before procurement and deployment decisions are finalized. So to me, BDIP is a strong example of participatory design operating at the level of vehicle and workplace infrastructure. On the right is just a depiction of our kind of ongoing work around research in humane scheduling. So one of the things that can get overlooked in conversations about future transit safety is that scheduling itself is a form of infrastructure. So scheduling shapes fatigue, recovery time, restroom access, stress, and the conditions under which operators are expected to respond to emergencies safely. So through engagement with operators, agency staff, rider advocates, and software vendors, we've been working on ways to integrate operator well-being directly into scheduling systems. So these 2 projects represent this kind of same larger principle, which is that safety is not just engineered into vehicles, it's designed across entire systems. So I'll close with a few broader takeaways from this work, just to kind of make it simple. So first, operators already manage complexity that exceeds the capacities of current automation systems, period. Second, poorly designed systems can turn workers into shock absorbers for technical limitations. And third, participation is not optional, it's a safety requirement. And finally, worker-centered governance is essential for building sustainable safety outcomes. I think there's often a tendency to frame innovation that's something that happens to workers, but what this research shows is that transit operators are already experts in safety-critical system management. The challenge moving forward is building processes that recognize and incorporate that expertise, because ultimately, safety depends on whether systems are designed with operators, not around them. So thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. This is great. What I will do now, in interest of time, I will briefly introduce who else is sitting on the panel, and then we'll have one question for each. With us, really, thanks, Andrew. I know your busy schedule, so we really appreciate you coming to today's panel. We have Andrew Falotico. Andrew Falotico is the Health and Safety Director for ATU International, overseeing the health and safety of over 240 locals across US and Canada. We have Sophie Vincent. Sophie Vincent is a joint health and safety co-chair for the Mellon division. She's been a bus operator with TTC for 20 years. We have Sean Fitzgerald. Sean Fitzgerald has a bachelor's of political science, I learned today, from the U of T, and has been a bus operator with TTC for 15 years. He represents, as a joint health and safety co-chair, 700 members of the Mount Dennis division in Toronto. Really happy to have you here, really appreciate your time. Naina and Sarah I introduced already. Andrew, I'll point the first question to you. I mean, in its essence, we always say that BDIP is not about the technologies. It's about the processes that it establishes. Can you elaborate a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. And first of all, I'd like to acknowledge everybody here and previous speakers, and it's great to be here. So to answer your question, so BDIP, we're actually taking a very rounded, holistic approach to actually, as Naina and Sarah had mentioned, human design centered in the human feedback based on what their needs are. And if we take a look at the essence of BDIP and how we came to this point, it was looking at how to build the technologies or how to use the equipment that serves the needs of the operator. However, it goes a little bit further than that. It's not just the operator, that is a very major component of that, but it's definitely looking at reliable transit service that helps the needs of the public, our accessibility, and looking at how we could potentially change what transportation looks like. But most importantly, it focuses on, and this is, we're going to get into a little bit of safety talk here, looking at the potential hazard exposures that are out there, how to mitigate them, and how to make that better in supporting the worker, the operator. Now, we're all familiar with that, the language of diversity, equity, inclusion, and the nuts and bolts of that is being able to support somebody in their workplace, either with limitations or so on. But that takes a very good holistic approach in being able to find out how do we make it better for the worker, how do we make it better for the public, and how do we take and use technology and moving it forward so it assists as opposed to becoming enslaved to it. So I want to be very careful about, the fact that there's a lot of talks about innovations, and there's a big novelty about, this is the new and upcoming technology, we have to use this, but we want to make sure we don't innovate ourselves out of a job. We want to make sure innovation serves us, that we don't serve it. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, we always say that, thanks, folks. We always say that, we design with and for operators. And I know Sean and I always joke, and we call it tribal knowledge, because we find that a lot of the knowledge, and this is exactly where the innovators miss the use cases, a lot of this knowledge is never really translated into anything that's public facing and you just simply don't know what exactly they need. So, Sean, I was wondering if you can elaborate, why is it so important to involve the bus operators or the end user, at the early design stages, not just testing, because then it's retroactive too.
Yes, thank you. Is this on?
I think there's a button. You can use it.
Hello? So yes, I found in the early stages, when you talk about tribal knowledge, how really interested the people that I represent and how willing they are to find problems. They're great problem finders. I technically do hazard identification, and then to find a channel where these problem finding or complaints by other definitions can be plugged right in to solutions-oriented people. And then how much appetite, as we talked, there was for this tribal knowledge. What would seem like mundane minutia at my dinner table at home when I'm talking about work, nobody's really interested. And then all of a sudden there's quite a lot of interest. And the participation that people are willing to give when they're being heard like that, they don't have to give the solution. They could tell you what they found as a problem. And I think it's rewarding for them. And I've seen in our spaces that we share that it's rewarding on the other side as well.
Yeah, thank you very much. I was wondering, did it come natural, when we go and now ask operators to co-design and co-develop with us, did it come natural to them that somebody's coming and asking them for their opinion?
No. There was originally met with some skepticism, or in every time that we show up with one of our roadshows at first, the skepticism being with their employer, is this sort of real? And then as we show them that it very much is, that your voice is being asked for, and it just uncovers right away that, yes, we have a lot to say and we know a lot. And does that answer the question?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. Sophie, next question is for you. We do really talk about involving the workers in the co-design and co-develop, but what does this really look like? I know that you as a joint health and safety co-chair were involved, let's say, in the barrier evaluations and designs that we did with across all divisions in Toronto. So I was wondering whether you can just tell us what was done. How does this look like in practice?
Actually, how this was done in practice is really just recognizing that we have to engage everybody. And that safety does involve everybody. A lot of times people look at safety, well, it's just management having to deal with it. But our voice is our power. And we cannot make changes unless we voice what we've seen and what we're experiencing. So actually engaging the operators, having them do surveys, coming out to see the actual buses, having the buses on the road to see how it actually works in real time, and then providing the feedback in order to make the changes that we need to make. So the most important thing I'm always saying is don't be afraid to engage everybody, to get them involved, because something so simple can change the direction. And that's the biggest thing that we've been doing now with the BDIP program, is just engaging.
Exactly, and this is where, as we mentioned at the beginning, I think now you folks get the idea of what it means that it's a culture change in how the processes are done when any technologies or any new things are coming into the system. So it's really, really important takeaway message. Nana, next one is for you. We always talk about that, the Transit Innovation Lab is an open ecosystem, and everybody is welcome. From innovators, we work from startups to small, medium-sized enterprises to some larger companies to academia. Can you elaborate a little bit on what the role of academia actually is in the whole
absolutely.
process?
So firstly, I want to say it's been such a pleasure working with Wenzi and Centennial. It's just really been a joy of my life. But I think what we've come to understand, with academia coming to the table, is that unbiased view that they bring in, right? So it's absolutely unbiased when they do a report versus an industry partner doing it, and they bring so much kind of brain power to the table, which I think is really indispensable. So I would say those two are kind of the core pieces. It also allows us to move fairly fast through academia channels. It's almost like an accelerated pathway. allows us to look at it a little bit more objectively. And I also think with the way BDIP is structured, it's allowed us to do a lot of whiteboarding, workshopping, getting everybody on this design table to be able to, again, like democratize innovation, ensure that everybody's got that diversity of thought and, an equal seat at the table, which I think academia has actually been a really huge enabler for that. And this lab, I think, that we're setting up and, will be a great sandbox to be able to do that. An actual anecdote I can also share is what we call the Gotta Go app is something that we're building today, which actually came out of a workshop, Sophie was part of this as well, and it was really around, I remember, Sophia, you saying like, oh, so you listened, when we were kind of just doing a little bit of problem framing and saying that, okay, while the operators are on their different routes, oftentimes they're not able to understand where the nearest washroom is, right? So something as simple as that, but it's such a grave problem when you think about the day-to-day work of an operator and how they have to be constantly vigilant on and like servicing and pretty much moving the city every day. How come we haven't thought through that, right? So it's only when an operator is with you in the room and you're discussing problems can issues like that come up. And I remember we were facilitating that workshop with academia. So it really became a way for us to learn about the problem. And now Centennial's taking away a prototype that we're building and going to be testing out in the summer. So I think that's a great case study as well of how far it goes when you bring the end user with you in the room and build empathy more than anything else.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Naina. Andrew, the last question is for you. What's the future for BDIP? Look, what do you see coming out of BDIP? What does the future really look like?
Yeah,
is there an end to it?
Yeah, that's a great word. So I always look at two words, program and process. Program usually has a beginning and an ending, even though BDIP has the word program, but it's more of a process which is infinite in its ability to move forward. And this is about bringing all ideas into the pipeline. And like I said, taking a holistic approach to innovation and to what technology can bring. But based on human-centered design, the future looks as we are now setting the path to put people first. And when we take a look at all the moving parts of the components of having the bus design and innovation program, we have the agencies, the bus manufacturers, we have the public, we have the operators, and then that's grounded in the empathy for the worker, the operator, but also considering the public. When we take a look at all the potential exposure hazards and the mitigations for that, all of that now is not just like checking off a box, but it says, how do we tailor the design of equipment and how do we make transportation better for the future based on the needs of people? It is an approach that is holistic, that allows us to come to the point or at the table where we are co-designing, we are making decisions. You might take the transportation, but you also deserve to be part of the process that allows you the best transit experience ever. Now, I have to tell you, from my point of view, from a health and safety perspective, it's always about the human factor. How do we get people to a better place? How do we make them more successful? And if you ever wanted to Google the values and principles of Centennial College, there's a global citizenship. It talks about everybody coming together and making the environment better, the impact on that. And we take a look at equity, diversity, inclusion. If you take a look at the language of that, that's about us all coming together, even if we have limitations, but giving us the tools to be successful. BDIP, the future of that, is bringing us all together, all the moving parts, all the components, to allow us to innovate properly, to give us a better environment, a better lifestyle, and most importantly, having a safe and reliable transit service that gives us a sense of being. Thank you.
Thank you very much.